Hello, everybody. Welcome to the very first RDLA webinar of 2024. I'm going to give everyone just a couple seconds to get logged on, and then we will get started. All right. Thank you guys again for joining us today. This is our January RDLA webinar. We're so excited to have you and to have a great agenda of speakers. If you do not know, during today's webinar, we are joined by some really powerful rare disease organizations who are going to share their 2024 policy priorities with you all. If you do prefer to call into today's webinar, you can do so using the phone number and webinar ID on the screen. If you have questions as we're going through each of the presentations, please feel free to type your question in the Q&A box, and a member of our team will direct your question to the speaker. So you can find the Q&A box at the very bottom of your screen. You'll see a menu and it just says Q&A. You click there and you can enter your questions that way. And then a quick reminder for any media joining us, we ask that you formally announce your participation and refrain from quoting anyone from today's webinar. We encourage you to follow up with participants afterwards for direct quotes. And as always, we have closed captioning available for today's webinar. You can click the live transcript button at the bottom of your window to begin the transcription. And we also have Spanish translation services available. So if you're interested in using that, you can click the link posted in the chat by Kimberly. All right, and then this is going to be our agenda for today. As I said before, each of these organizations are joining us to share their policy priorities for the year. So we are first going to hear from Cynthia Benz from the Personalized Medicine Coalition. We will then hear from Sheila Murphy from Research America. Next, we have Karen Holzer from the National Organization for Rare Disorders and Jamie Sullivan from the Every Life Foundation for Rare Diseases. And then last but not least, we are joined by Jennifer Dexter from the National Health Council. So Cynthia, I will go ahead and turn things over to you.
Thank you so much, Caitlin. And I'd like to start off by thanking the Every Life Foundation for the opportunity to join you all today to share a little bit of our priorities for 2024. For those of you who I haven't had the pleasure of meeting, my name is Cynthia Benz. I'm the Senior Vice President of Public Policy at the Personalized Medicine Coalition. The Personalized Medicine Coalition is a 200-member multi-stakeholder coalition across, I think we have more than a dozen sectors of healthcare right now represented in our membership. We represent a range of disease areas and patient populations. That includes everything from adult patients with advanced cancer to families with children experiencing rare diseases. And really, we all come together to make sure that patients have access to the technologies and the treatments to advance that targeted approach to care that everyone likes to see. We're really grateful to the Every Life Foundation and a number of the folks on the line today for being great partners in PMC's mission and sharing membership with all of you. So next slide, please. So just to level set, I'm going to talk for a few minutes about how we define personalized medicine and how we set our policy priorities for each year. We define personalized medicine as an approach to healthcare in which physicians use information from diagnostic tests along with the patient's medical history to guide prevention and treatment plans that are consistent with that patient's biology, their values, and their circumstances. When it comes to rare diseases and personalized medicine, we know that it plays an important role, and personalized medicine can help in both the diagnosis and treatment development, as well as actual clinical care for patients who have diseases that have a genetic origin. Every year, PMC releases a report that we put together. I think someone needs to mute. Get a little feedback. Thank you. So every year PMC releases a report where we highlight personalized medicines that have been approved each year and what percentage of those would be considered a personalized medicine by our definition. We conducted our first analysis back in 2015, and each year we've seen that personalized medicines have consistently accounted for more than a quarter of all new treatments that are approved by the FDA. Just in the past decade alone, we've seen this trend. Previously, most of the personalized medicines were in oncology. We've seen a lot more development in areas like rare diseases, infectious diseases, and common chronic diseases. We're in the process of finalizing our 2023 approvals report, but the last draft that I saw shows for a pretty consistent trend, about 30% of the approvals from 2023 were personalized medicines, and a fair number of those were in rare. So we'll be sharing that with you all in February. So in terms of how we set our policy agenda, I'm sure you'll hear this from Every Life and also from National Health Council. We are a bottom-up organization that actually listens to our members. So we really take the lead in identifying what PMC's members believe are policy priorities, and we place our emphasis on the things that are most important to those members. Generally, our policy priorities fall into 4 buckets. The first is issues related to modernization of regulatory policies for diagnostics, treatments, and other types of supported technologies, modernizing coverage and payment policies, and also reimbursement for delivery of care, advancing innovation in care delivery and establishing and demonstrating the value of personalized medicine, and cultivating support for personalized medicine among policymakers. And our real emphasis has been in Congress and also with the administration. So typically we have around 45 issues that we focus on in a given year. And there's a lot more that I could talk about, but I'm really going to focus on those areas where I think that there's synergy with the rare disease community and might be of particular interest to you. So next slide, please. One of the key initiatives that we see for cultivating support for personalized medicine in Congress is the Congressional Personalized Medicine Caucus. This is a multi-year effort that was supported by PMC to get it off the ground, and we were really fortunate that it was introduced in a bipartisan, bicameral manner back in 2020. It seems like forever ago, but members of the caucus are committed to making sure that healthcare policies reflect the principles of personalized medicine, and that the caucus can provide an opportunity for both education and helping to shape legislation that will help personalized medicine move forward. The caucus isn't focused on a particular disease area, but I mention it because it's complementary to the work that the Rare Disease Caucus does, and many other caucuses that are focused on specific diseases, and we share membership of both. Our co-chairs from the beginning have been Senator Kirsten Sinema, Senator Tim Scott, and Congressman Eric Swalwell. We had a bit of a changing of the guard in leadership this year once Congressman Emmer, who was our founding Republican member, had to step down as co-chair to become majority whip. Not a bad change. He had to relinquish his duties as co-chair of the caucus. So we're now working with Congressman John Molinar from Michigan, and he's been a great partner so far. Some of you know him because he's an appropriator and really does understand the role that health agencies play in advancing care. And he has a desire to increase his leadership on healthcare issues. And so we know that he's going to be a wonderful member to champion our cause. This year, our emphasis on the caucus is really going to be continuing bipartisanship and growing the caucus in that manner. There's been a lot of changes in Congress and a number we expect after the election. So we want to make sure that support for both the Republican and Democratic side of things continues to be something that we emphasize with the caucus. And I would say that from our educational briefings, I went and looked back at the list of them. And I just want to thank Dylan, Simon, and Jamie Sullivan from Every Life. Every year we've had at least one briefing that had something to do with rare disease. And you either have spoken at the briefings or helped us identify families that want to talk about their story. So thank you, and we hope that continues in the coming year. And if you're interested in learning more about the caucus, there's a link on the web on the slide here, and I'm happy to answer any questions. So I'll ask you to switch to the next slide. So here are real high priorities, at least in the first part of this year. The first is a bill that, if you've been on other RDLA webinars, you've heard about. It's called the Precision Medicine Answers for Kids Today Act. And this is one that has been something that we've worked with Every Life and other partners on to try to advance not just reintroduction this year, but making sure that it's something that does come to fruition. And we're very committed to making it happen this year. For those of you who are less familiar with the bill, it would do a number of things that I'd just like to talk about. The first is it would require guidance from CMS on how states can provide consistent coverage for genetic testing and genomic sequencing services through the early periodic screening, diagnosis, and treatment benefit in Medicaid. This seems like it's something that would be simple, but it doesn't exist. And there is inconsistent coverage in Medicaid programs for these technologies if coverage exists at all. The next thing that it would do is it would require actual data gathering and reporting on how often genetic tests and genomic sequencing are covered and reimbursed. And that's going to fill a critical evidence gap right now that we know is serving as an access barrier. One of the most important things it does is it establishes a 3-year demonstration program at HHS for up to 15 states to cover genetic testing and genomic sequencing services and measure how it improves the diagnosis of pediatric health conditions. And we think this is important. We know there's been a lot of momentum in states to require coverage of some of these technologies. Also, there have been efforts to try to encourage states to cover things like whole genome sequencing, but ultimately states won't be provided with the funding to do that. And in most cases, any of the coverage that's required would happen in the typical 1-year window that you see in Medicaid programs. So we think this is really complementary to efforts that are already underway, but it provides that extra oomph to states that haven't had the funding to be able to support it. And then the last thing that it does is it would call for a National Academy study on how the federal government can really facilitate provider and patient access beyond what's already done in the bill. And this is something that would allow, better standards of coverage and types of examples for how this can be rolled out to all 50 states. So if you would like to be involved in this, we have a very active stakeholder effort doing virtual meetings on the Hill, in-person meetings on the Hill, and we'd love to have your support for it. The next thing I'm going to talk about very briefly, because I know Research America probably has a lot more to say about the funding situation, but we are advocates for appropriations for NIH and FDA. We know that the health agencies have a critical role to play in advancing personalized medicine. We've been fortunate to see both agencies see increases in previous years, but we're really concerned about a lot of the talk that's happened and a lot of the just uncertainty that's happening around the funding situation for FY 2024, that these agencies are not only going to face cuts this year, but it's going to have ripple effects into the next few appropriation cycles. We are continuing to highlight the work that FDA does to support rare diseases, and also what NIH does through NCATS and their All of Us program. And so, please consider us partners in helping to carry those messages forward. The issue of oversight of laboratory developed tests. This is something that for more than a decade has been important to PMC members. I would say that our membership has support on both sides for how the evolution of regulation of LDTs is happening. Some of you who have followed this closely may know that there was recently an FDA proposed rule that came out that would give FDA the authority to regulate LDTs under the medical device statute. There's also been a multi-year effort on the Hill to try to have legislation passed that would give FDA a more nuanced pathway for how it would handle laboratory developed tests. We know that those efforts have stalled in Congress, but there's been some renewed interest given the FDA's recent proposed rulemaking. And we found that even though PMC does not have a position on how the ultimate goal of modernizing regulatory oversight of LDTs is achieved, that we know a lot about what has happened over the years and where people's positions lie. And there's a real hunger in Congress and understanding the complexities around it. We know for the rare space that it's really not as simple as, you have a test and, FDA should just oversee it. There's a lot of ways that tests come to market either through academic labs or in partnerships that companies use diagnostic tests in their development programs. So, I think there are some special considerations there that aren't fully understood. The Inflation Reduction Act, I know that this is something that EveryLife's been very engaged in, and a number of you have. From the personalized medicine perspective, where we're focusing our time in 2024 is understanding the consequences of the drug price negotiation program on both a company's reconsideration of indications they pursue or the populations they pursue them in. I know I talked to you a bit about how we track personalized medicine approvals. We know just between 2006 and 2022 that there were 68 personalized medicines approved that had multiple indications. We know at least 20 of those had smaller indications that were approved earlier before their larger indications. And, we know with what the timeframes are that were set forth in the drug negotiation program that companies have already had to make decisions or will be making decisions on whether or not they pursue those earlier indications first. We hope to quantify what the impact would have been if the IRA was in place when these drugs that have been brought to market were initially approved. And we hope that that's going to be something that we can use and the community can use in advocating for why there needs to be a more thoughtful approach to any sort of changes that take place to the drug price negotiation program. And then I'll close because I don't want to take up everyone's time. But the regulation of artificial intelligence and machine learning in the context of personalized medicine, I know we've all heard AI/ML as a buzzword, and we know that there's just a lot of interest on the part of policymakers in having some sort of standards and oversight for AI/ML, particularly in healthcare. We now have a working group that we put together that's looking at the different types of uses of AI/ML that are already going on in discovery, development, and the delivery of personalized medicine. And our hope is that this group is going to come up with some principles that can help the coalition respond to any efforts that we see to either regulate AI/ML through the federal agencies or through legislation. And these are principles that will likely be public facing. So we'd be happy to share them with you and any interested advocates to assist in your own advocacy, given that personalized medicine and rare are becoming closer and closer aligned. So I'll stop there. I'm happy to answer any questions you have, but really appreciate your time and your partnership.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. We do have a couple of questions for you.
Okay.
Someone has asked, what is the difference between personalized medicine and just medicine in general?
That's a great question. We would say that personalized medicine, because of its focus on diagnosis and targeted treatment, that it's really geared toward trying to address those inefficiencies we see in how care is delivered. We know that personalized medicine is already an important part of healthcare, so I wouldn't say that they're totally separate, but given how medicine has been practiced in the past, there are a lot of ways that personalized medicine needs to be thought of differently just to help with implementation of that. So that's a great question. Usually we get what's the difference between personalized and precision medicine, and that's an easier answer. It's the same.
Another question for you is, who can advocates contact if they want to engage in the stakeholder group for the Precision Medicine Answers for Kids Today Act?
Me. And my email address is on the first slide, but please do let me know if you're interested. You don't have to be a PMC member to participate in the stakeholder group, and we leave it very open to participation because we know that this is something that's very wide reaching. So please let me know. Happy to talk with you.
Awesome. And one last question. Someone is asking, how do you all interact with prescription drug affordability boards?
We don't, primarily because those are at the state level, and we don't do state level advocacy. We don't engage directly with the PDAPs.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great. We are going to move to our next speaker, Sheila Murphy from Research America.
Thank you so much, Caitlin, and thank you everybody for having us here today. Really appreciate the opportunity to talk about Research America's work. I am Vice President of Programs at Research America, and I have been with Research America for 2 years. So I feel like I'm still in the learning mode, but I have learned a lot along the way. Next slide, please. And just a little bit about how we are structured. We are an alliance organization, an alliance of several different components: academia, industry, patient groups, and nonprofits, scientific societies, and foundations and state and local groups. And we work together as an alliance to try to affect change on things like the NIH budget, policy issues that affect patient community and all different aspects of the healthcare ecosystem. We do a number of different we do this in a number of different ways. We have regular alliance discussions where we talk about important topics that are coming up along the way. We do a National Healthcare Forum in September every year, where we again focus on the most prominent healthcare issues and research issues that are finding themselves front and center. We also do a lot of engagement with the Hill and the executive branch on funding issues, as we talked about a little bit earlier, and I will talk about that a little bit more. Next slide, please. So one of our key priorities is to push for greater funding for NIH and the NSF, CDC, FDA, all health and science research agencies. We're actually right now just in the process of finalizing a letter to appropriators regarding the FY24 funding levels. Obviously, as everybody knows, we are hopefully going to have a CR signed today that will extend the FY24 budget into March. And then hopefully at that point, we'll get final FY24 numbers and then start the ball rolling all over again with FY25. We have been really concerned about the FY24 numbers, particularly in the House, and have been really pushing hard to get that number up. We also are engaged in policy issues such as preventing NIH and other research agencies from being required to negotiate prescription drug and other prices. And we're also, as our previous speaker talked about, assisting in efforts to deal with the unintended consequences of the Inflation Reduction Act in the development of treatment for rare disease. And, obviously high drug prices is a concern for everyone and is something that we would all like to see. But, in our view, it's really important to do that in a way that doesn't have unintended consequences and that doesn't have adverse consequences for really important parts of the biomedical research pipeline. And then we also do a public opinion survey every year. And the survey is designed to gauge public views on the importance of medical progress and then support for federally funded research. We are actually in the field now with our 2024 survey, but I do have one slide, next slide, please, that gives you kind of a snippet of an important finding in our 2023 survey, which has to do with people's willingness to pay slightly more in taxes if they are sure the money would go to additional medical and health research. And well over half strongly support allocating an extra small amount of money to funding for medical and health research on a bipartisan basis. Overall, obviously, as you can see, it's 60%, with 57% of Republicans and 72% of Democrats. So I'm happy to talk in more detail about any part of Research America's work and answer any questions that any of you might have. And again, I really want to thank you for inviting us here today, and really enjoy working with all of you and hope to continue to do so in the future.
Great. Thank you so much, Sheila. I'm not seeing any questions at the moment, but I do want to just let everyone know, if you're not watching the chat box, Kinley, our state advocacy manager, has just put a link in for an upcoming Research America webinar. So if you're interested in checking that out, the link is in the chat. You can find more information and register there.
And if I could just add to your pitch there, Caitlin, it has to do with the proposed rule that the administration's issued for NIST, which obviously is different than NIH, but the concept is the same. It's proposing a change in the way the Bayh-Dole Act is interpreted, and it's a pretty significant. It seems relatively minor when you read about it, but it has potentially really significant implications. So really hope that you can join us on Monday, where we have a couple of experts talking about this issue in more detail.
Great. Thank you so much, Sheila.
Thank you.
All right. Next, we have Karen Holzer with the National Organization for Rare Disorders. Karen was not able to make the webinar live, but was gracious enough to record her presentation for you all. So I am going to play that for you here.
Good afternoon. It is my great pleasure to be here and to speak with you today about our 2024 policy priorities. I'm Karen Holtz and I direct Policy and Regulatory Affairs for NORD, the National Organization for Rare Disorders. As you're probably aware, NORD is an umbrella organization for about 330 disease-specific patient advocacy groups in the rare space. We were founded 40 years ago by patients for patients. After grassroots efforts across the rare disease community played a key role in getting the Orphan Drug Act passed, the leaders of the disease-specific patient advocacy groups did not want to lose the momentum that had helped to really propel the world's first Orphan Drug Act that created vital incentives for rare disease drug development. And so they finalized and formalized their coalition into what is now NORD. We continue to be true to that grassroots focus, and we see our mission as improving the health and well-being of people with rare diseases by driving advances in care, research, and policy. Obviously, there's a lot of action in the policy space right now. So thinking through our policy priorities, I would really like to group them into 3 buckets. The first bucket, true to our roots at NORD and our more than 40-year history, is to give patients a voice in regulation and legislation. Another big priority for us is drug pricing, and in particular, the Inflation Reduction Act. And last, but definitely not least, we have a lot of 2024 priorities around improving coverage and reimbursement for our patients, which we know continue to be big challenges for many in our community. But let's start with giving patients a voice. One of the most effective ways that we have found to do so is through Rare Disease Advisory Councils, or RDACs. Today, we have helped to establish rare disease advisory councils in 27 states across the country, which you can see on the map here. And these RDACs have been tremendously helpful in ensuring that in state capitals, the voice of the rare disease patient is heard whenever policies is made that impact us. And that includes a variety of issues from drug pricing and coverage and reimbursement to various other issues that we know are impacting the daily life of so many in our community. Rare disease advisory councils are usually comprised of patients and patient organizations, healthcare partners, community members, industry partners, state agencies, and educational institutions. In 2024, we look forward to help establish RDACs in the states that currently do not have an active RDAC, and to bring the existing RDACs together to share best practices and lessons learned. In fact, last year, for the first time, we were able to bring together leaders from current RDACs in Washington, D.C. in person for an amazing meeting to really exchange best practices and lessons learned, which has been tremendously helpful. If you're interested in our Project RDAC, please reach out to me or directly to our RDAC team at the emails shown on the slide. In addition to RDEX, some of the key priorities for NORD in 2024 around giving patients a voice, around making sure that clinical trials are working well for our community, and making sure that drug development, and in particular pediatric research and drug development, are working well. So we are following a variety of legislative and policy proposals in that space. As I mentioned, the second big bucket of priorities for 2024 circle around drug pricing. Maybe chief among them is the Inflation Reduction Act. The Inflation Reduction Act, as you might know, allows the Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services for the first time to negotiate the price of some prescription drugs. But there are some concerns with it. We are advocating with a variety of partners in the rare space, including the EveryLife Foundation, for small technical fixes that would fix the current problem with the orphan drug exclusion in the Inflation Reduction Act. Congress purposefully excluded orphan drugs or some orphan drugs from drug price negotiation, but unfortunately, inadvertently, drug companies that have orphan drugs on the market are disincentivized from further studying these drugs for additional rare diseases. And we think that small technical fixes will be able to go a long way for our community. We are also working very closely with CMS to ensure that patient perspectives on the value of the treatments and therapeutic alternatives are meaningfully incorporated in the drug price negotiation program. As you might know, CMS's first round of initial price offers are due to drug manufacturers for the first 10 selected drugs in February. And we are interested to see how the first year of patient listening sessions will have impacted that process. And we will continue to work to further strengthen and improve patient perspective and input, both for the Inflation Reduction Act as well as various other drug pricing efforts. Another thing around drug pricing that we are watching closely in 2024 is PBM reform. Really trying to increase accountability and transparency around prescription benefit managers, and ultimately ensuring that patients and families will benefit from PBM reform. Understanding that too often patients and families do not adequately benefit from the rebates that manufacturers are providing to PBMs. We're also expecting a variety of other drug pricing issues. Many states have established or in the process of establishing PDABs, prescription drug affordability boards, which oftentimes set ceiling levels for how much the drug company can charge in a given state for a drug. And we are trying to provide meaningful input and advice on these issues. And we expect a variety of other drug pricing issues to come up this year. You may have seen some recent administration action on things like patent thickets or what's called margin rights, which would require compulsory licensing of any innovation that was funded with taxpayer money, which for many in the orphan space is tremendously problematic given the impact of government funding through NIH and other funding sources for rare disease research. The third big bucket that we are watching closely in 2024 is legislation to improve coverage and reimbursement issues, which we know too often make it difficult, if not impossible, for our patients and families to access the care that they need. We are watching closely a number of legislative and regulatory proposals that would reduce utilization management, such as safe step therapy or prior authorization. We know the diagnostic odyssey continues to be a big challenge, and there continues to be too much red tape around access to care. So we are drafting and hoping to introduce soon a genetic testing bill that would improve coverage and reimbursement, as well as access for genetic testing that is medically necessary. We're watching a number of biomarker bills across different states. And we're hoping to see the Accelerating Kids Access to Care Act pass soon, which would allow children that are on Medicaid or to see providers across state lines in a way that would be easier than the current process. We also expect a lot more action around telehealth, which we know during this pandemic was tremendously helpful in allowing our patients to seek the care that they needed. And we are hopeful to see more proposals that would make it more feasible for our patients to continue to benefit from telehealth. With this, I would like to thank you for your time. Sorry I'm not there today to answer questions, but please reach out to me at the email below for any questions or if you are interested in getting engaged in any of our activities. Thank you, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
All right. So like Karen said, if you guys have any questions related to her presentation, feel free to reach out. Her email address is listed on the screen here for you guys. And I'm now going to, went a little too far, switch things over. And Jamie, I'm going to turn things over to you.
Thanks, Caitlin. Hi, everyone. It's great to be with you again to start out the year. So Caitlin, you can go to the next slide. I'm going to jump around a little bit, but wanted to start just a reminder for everyone, especially if it's your first time with us, that everything that EveryLife does, you can click through to the 3 pillars, Caitlin. Sorry, I forgot to take out the animation. Everything that EveryLife does in our policy initiatives really revolves around these 3 issues. The need to reduce and eliminate the diagnostic odyssey that we now know takes an average of 6.3 years for a rare disease patient to get a diagnosis after symptoms emerge, to ultimately, and why we were founded in the first place, to focus on therapy development and development of the pathways for discovery and approval of effective therapies. How can we close the innovation gap for the 95% of rare diseases that have no treatments currently, as well as make improvements even in those that 5% that do have treatments. And then, of course, access and value, and making sure that patients have access to approved therapies that are delivered in a timely fashion. You can go to the next slide. So these are 3 really large areas. There is no shortage of need to address in the rare disease community, and there are so many priorities that you've heard today and in your own individual patient groups. So really just give you an insight into how EveryLife sets our priorities. And first and foremost, the work we do focuses really on systemic issues that are not disease specific. So our policy efforts really are going to focus broadly on solutions that can improve diagnosis, treatment development, and access for a large group of rare diseases, or all rare diseases in general. And then we look a lot at things like who are we seeking to impact, where are there opportunities, what's most urgent, and then really also what's practical, what's achievable, how do we optimize our efforts given what's happening, for example, in Congress or in our regulatory agencies, and how do we, what evidence do we have? So we're really focused on evidence-driven policy as well. Just gives you a little bit of insight of the process we go through every year. And this is not a one point in time process. This is something we work with our community Congress organizations. I see many of you on the are on the webinar right now, and all of this. We closed last year. You can go to the next slide. In December with our Community Congress annual meeting on December 14th, and in DC, where we had about 200 people, both in person and virtually, to really close out the year, celebrate the reasons, the progress that was made throughout the year for many of your communities, but then really let's start looking forward to 2024. We know that despite this progress that was achieved for many of you in your therapy development or in our regulatory efforts, there are so many communities that are being left behind that haven't experienced the progress, that have real challenges and real reasons for concern moving forward. And so as we look to that, we really work with our community Congress groups to prioritize both legislative and regulatory issues that we're going to lead alongside you, engage in, as well as then those efforts that you're leading that we can provide support to, and then those efforts that are out there that we monitor. And that leads me to, I thought I'd give you, because we're in the second year of a congressional session, give you a little bit of an update on what are some of those issues we're following, and then just dive in briefly on a couple of them. So Caitlin, you can go to the next slide. So where did we end last year? This is putting a little bit before the next slide, gives you a little bit of a summary overview. We have a policy grid that you're going to see next, and this captures the progress that happened in Congress last year. And you'll see how this relates to the individual bills just a moment. So you can go to the next slide, Caitlin. All right. So this is our Community Congress Legislative Policy Grid, and I want to focus really on the top two boxes. These are the issues that the RDLA Foundation and our Community Congress partners have really selected for leadership and for a more specific engagement in. And then you see all of the great bills in the support and monitor categories. The support category are so many of the bills that you all lead in your organizations that are really relevant to a broad swath of rare disease communities. But they're something that you're all are leading, and EveryLife and the broader rare disease community is providing support to as possible, as bandwidth allows, as opportunities emerge. We absolutely try to provide support for these issues. But this webinar is about organizational priorities, so wanted to focus a little bit more in the lead and engage category. In the lead category, we are absolutely still focused on newborn screening. I'm going to dive into that in just a little bit. In terms of advancing appropriations, you've heard about other groups' appropriations work on this call. We focus on supporting funding for our federal research agencies, for our regulatory efforts, especially the FDA's Orphan Products Grant Program, which fills a really critical need for the rare disease therapy development and natural history study funding opportunities. We are really focused again on protecting and strengthening the accelerated approval pathway and in orphan drug incentives, both of which are critical to the overall issue of how do we improve the regulatory process. How do we create an environment where those communities who are truly being left behind can have opportunities to advance real progress in science and therapy development? In Engage, we're also very much engaged in the conversations you heard from Cynthia around diagnostic testing, and with our partners at NSGC around the Access to Genetic Counselor Services Act. And then thanks to the input of our community Congress members and the RDLA advocates, we absolutely have been increasing our engagement in the Help Copays Act, which I believe you've heard quite a bit about, but would really help with the affordability of treatments by preventing insurers from implementing copay accumulator programs, which don't count the manufacturer copay assistance towards the patient's out-of-pocket costs, ultimately leaving the patient still to foot the bill even after the deductible should have been met. I'm going to go into a couple of these in a little bit more detail, but first I wanted to show also, and Caitlin, you can go to the next slide, that we have a state policy grid. So we are in now just starting year 3 of our state policy program. We have a state policy manager, Emily, who is interested and eager to talk to many of you who might be working on these issues on the ground in your states. And this grid was similarly developed with our community Congress partners and represents the issues that we are going to engage in at the state level. In the lead category, as always, we will continue to pursue state RUSP alignment legislation, as well as supporting increasingly advocates coming to us and saying they want to get involved in RUSP alignment in your state. And we're really happy to see that interest and support more of your own efforts in your states as you explore whether RUSP alignment is a possibility. We're also really looking to advance our work in how can we make the drug utilization review boards or the pharmacy and therapeutics committee processes, those committees that help determine Medicaid coverage and commercial coverage, formularies, utilization management, out-of-pocket, potential expenses. How do we make sure that those processes are representative of rare disease expertise, that they're transparent, and that they are accessible to rare disease advocates out there? And we're looking to partner. We have a principles document that was developed with our community Congress, and we're looking to partner with a few of you to help advance that into real policy change. And we have some ideas and prospects that we are working towards, and you should hear more about later in the year. We're also very much engaging in issues around the interstate medical licensure compact. So how can we preserve, make it easier for people to access care across state lines? Many states, are leading copay accumulator bans at the state level. And of course, looking at ways that we can prevent states from restricting access to innovative therapies. And then how can we increase access to genetic testing services? So again, you see this sort of 4 categories. These categories represent, in part, the sort of emphasis we place and the amount of bandwidth we use on these different issues. And at a state level, it's impossible to be on the ground in all 50 states. But absolutely, we are trying to provide support to your efforts and to develop and put more into as many states as we can. So you can go to the next slide. Okay, so I wanted to just dive into, and sorry, Caitlin, you're gonna have to click a little bit through a couple of those issues in more detail. I'll be super quick to leave Jen the last 10 minutes here. But one of our priorities for 2024 is putting evidence to work. We have spent quite a bit of time and resources over the last 2 years on developing evidence-driven policy resources, as well as publications that provide data that is really critical to guide what policy we put forward, but then also to support the advocacy efforts that are out there in existing policies. And so we are really focused on taking all of that work. There are 2 papers in publication that are pending publication now, but most of these are out there. And they can really be tools for your own advocacy efforts. And so one of the things we want to focus on in 2024 is making it easy for you to use this data and to really put it to work in your own efforts. So you can expect to hear a lot more on this topic. And also we'll be asking for your input and making sure that what we design, what we put out there is easy to use and is useful to you. Next slide. I'm going to skip over the IRA because Karen mentioned this in her presentation, but I'll just say we're really pleased to be partnering with so many organizations that signed the letter, as well as NORD and National Health Council and others who are in a steering committee to really push these small technical corrections to make a short-term impact while we all really look at the evidence and see what long-term policy changes are needed. Next slide. Another issue that you might have to click through once, I'm not sure why that's not showing up. There we go. Another issue that was not on the grid specifically, but kind of falls in that orphan drug incentives is the priority review voucher reauthorization. It is impossible to cover PRVs in a minute here, but just wanted to put this on everyone's radar. This is definitely on our priority list for 2024. PRVs are issued to expedite the development and promotion of drugs in the rare pediatric disease space, as well as a few other spaces. If a PRV is awarded, so there's a number of qualifications, and we will have a whole video and session on PRVs to go into all of these details. But basically, when a PRV is redeemed, it shortens the approval process timeline and is seen as a really big incentive and as part of the orphan drug incentives overall. they will expire. The authorization of the program expires in 2024. And if not reauthorized, the FDA will no longer be able to award rare pediatric PRVs as of September 30th, 2026. This is a program that has been reauthorized multiple times. It is definitely a critical piece of the overall incentive picture for rare disease, and something that we will be working to provide education on, and we will be working collaboratively with many in the community to devise a strategy to reauthorize this program. Next slide. Quickly then, newborn screening, like I said, we are working with a coalition of organizations to provide updates to the Newborn Screening Saves Lives reauthorization, which has been stalled for a number of years in Congress. And really, if we had to pass the original reauthorization when it was due, we'd be drafting the next one now. So we're really taking this time to put all of this good work that went into the newborn screening modernization process, the roundtables that we held, to work by making some updates to the language. And we look forward to hopefully seeing that introduced in 2024. And then also in RUSP alignment, we are focused on Wisconsin, finishing out the Wisconsin bill, which was started last year, as well as starting to lay the groundwork for a bill in Virginia. And like I said, there are several other states that we're working in support of advocates on the ground. And I think the last slide. And then really just wanted to end back really at our origins and improving the regulatory process. We've had so many conversations about the need for greater consistency in the application of regulatory flexibility that was at the core of the STAT Act, as well as much of the engagement throughout last year regarding requests for an FDA task force to evaluate how the FDA does ensure consistency in how decisions are made. We know that progress has been uneven and that the FDA does have a great deal of regulatory flexibility, but what is key is predictable and consistent in how that is applied. And so we are working with our community Congress groups and advocates to identify some real concrete solutions, both that are legislative as well as tools and resources that might help the agency understand how regulatory flexibility has been applied in the past and how we can move forward and ensuring more consistency in the future. So this is in the early stages, and I look forward to coming back to you all with some results in the future. And that was a little bit of a whirlwind overview, but happy to answer questions or take some comments offline. And then stay tuned, we'll have more after our first round of community Congress meetings take place in the next few weeks.
Perfect. Thank you, Jamie. I just have one quick question for you here. Someone is asking, has the FDA stated whether it supports PRV reauthorization or not?
Not specifically that I've heard. However, I know that there have been several sort of comments that, criticisms from the staff. I know there are some general concerns that you hear off the record. However, I have not seen anything on the record. It is an incredibly difficult legislative environment to achieve reauthorization, but it is something that, if you look at the overall picture of the direction our incentives are taking, that is particularly concerning if this program would go away also.
Great. Thank you so much, Jamie. And last but not least, we are joined by Jennifer Dexter with the National Health Council. So Jennifer, I will turn things over to you.
Thank you. This actually worked out really well having me be last, even though it wasn't exactly the plan. I was just to accommodate schedules. But I'm really pleased to be here today on behalf of the National Health Council. I'm Jennifer Dexter. I'm the Vice President for Policy there. For those of you that don't know who the National Health Council is, you can go to the next slide. We were founded, we can go to the next one. We were founded over 100 years ago by the patient advocacy community, by a bunch of diverse organizations to come together to forge consensus and drive patient-centered health policy. Our goal is to create access and affordability, high-value, sustainable healthcare. We're made up of more than 170 national health-related organizations. This is our slide, our cloud of our patient advocacy groups, other health-related organizations and businesses. Our other members, you can go to the next slide, include health-related associations, that's these groups, and nonprofit organizations representing the provider, research, family, caregiver communities. We also include representatives from businesses, from biopharmaceutical device manufacturers, diagnostic, generic drugs, payer organizations, the full gamut. Our goal, and that includes everybody, all my fellow speakers on this call, all represent member organizations for the National Health Council. And it kind of makes why I was joking about making it sense for us to go last is part of our role is to kind of drive consensus and bring all of these different viewpoints and priorities together into a manageable bite. So if we go to the next slide, I can talk a little bit about our process, which I think is helpful. This will seem slightly familiar. There's a lot of cross-fertilization that happens here in DC. But this is our matrix that we develop every year, and it is 2 axes. The first is the importance to patients and the patient advocacy community, and the second is we as NHC and our ability to impact it. And that divides things up into 4 quadrants: things we lead on, things we partner on, things we engage on as needed, and things we just monitor. One thing I did want to call attention to is health equity. We very purposefully put it in the middle there. It was an interesting process, but one of the things we drive and believe is that health equity drives all of the work that we do in addressing disparities based on race, religion, ethnicity, status, disability, all of those things. So looking at care delivery, insurance access, innovation, social drivers of health, things like access to food and housing and things like that, are infused throughout all of our priorities. So our lead things, the things that we are best known for, I think, are healthcare costs, making sure that affordability is there for the individual patient, but also making sure that patients are listened to and leading decisions around how things are structured that affect payment for healthcare. And then the value, and that's not just the dollar value, that's the real life value of a treatment or a service or a model is driven by the patient. Patient access is really about how can you make sure you're getting actually what you need. Pushing back against inappropriate use of utilization management, helping get into decisions and making sure patients are listened to by Medicare, Medicaid, and CHIP, and all of the federal insurance programs. Getting access to telehealth, that's emerged as such an important issue for people, particularly in rural communities. In the medical innovation side, those are things that are really about like, how do we get new medicines to the market, new treatments to the market. Working with FDA, we really worked with a lot of the folks, my fellow panelists here, on creating a patient-focused drug development process at FDA, which is making sure that there are standard things that happen around development, around approval, and all of that at FDA that make sure the patient is heard and listened to. So that's kind of our things that we lead on. But one of the things that we partner on that is emerging very quickly is, not emerging very quickly, but is very important in this moment, is increasing and improving insurance coverage. We work through a lot of coalitions and with a lot of our partners on the line to make sure that people have access to both the federal and the private and other insurances that they need, and that quality and that insurance is quality. So this looks like a whole lot of things, and it really is. And it's reflective of like kind of, we go through a process of listening to our members, listening to our partners, surveying the environment, and that leads us to this. So if we can move to the next slide, and we do this every year. So for 2024, what does that mean? And one of the things I'm starting to do is overlay on that matrix. What are the things that either are like emerging as must-dos, highest priority for the patient community, or things where we have fertile ground, things from the matrix where we know Congress has some interest or some ability or is likely to move. So for 2024, we've pulled out a couple things that I think are going to be the rising issues that we're going to be spending a lot of time on, and I wanted to run through those today. First is minimizing the effective utilization management, as I mentioned, making sure that's being used appropriately. Protecting access to Medicaid. We've had ongoing discussions forever, but really since like 2016, 2017, around making sure that Medicaid is protected and remains available and safe and even grows. Increasing patient engagement at CMS. As I said before, we had done a lot of work with FDA. We want to do some similar work at the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services that oversee those programs. Continuing telehealth flexibilities. The telehealth flexibilities that came in because of COVID expire at the end of this year, and we're going to need to have Congress act on those. So making sure that they act correctly will be a highest priority. And then the final one, which again, you'll see these reflected in all the other discussions that I've had today, is making sure that the voice of the patient is reflected in the rising debate about artificial intelligence in healthcare and in other areas. Will be one of the things we're hearing most about. There aren't a lot of solutions yet, but making sure the patients are part of creating those solutions will be a high priority. So I think that's it. You can go to the next slide. Just have my contact information if you'd like it. I am more than available to answer questions or take an email or anything you need. Feel free to contact me. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much, Jennifer. We really appreciate you joining us. I know you've had a busy day, so we appreciate you coming to share. I don't see any questions right now, but if you all do have questions for Jennifer, her email is here on the screen, so feel free to jot that down so you can reach out. I just want to give you a quick reminder that we will not have an RDLA webinar in February because we will be very busy with all things Rare Disease Week. So we will be back here for our next RDLA webinar on March 31st. And if you have not already registered for Rare Disease Week, registration is now open. You can view the agenda and register at rareadvocates.org/RDW. Rare Disease Week is going to start on Sunday, February 25th, and last until February 28th. We will be live streaming select Rare Disease Week events, but all events will be in person, including meetings with members of Congress. So if you have any questions about Rare Disease Week or any of the topics discussed today, feel free to reach out to me. My email address is listed down here at the bottom. Also feel free to reach out to Shannon with any questions. And of course, be sure that you are signed up for our newsletter. The link is here, and also following us on all of our different social media platforms to stay up to date with everything that we have going on. And of course, we want to give a huge thank you to our January RDLA webinar sponsors for making today's webinar happen. Lastly, thank you to all of our speakers for taking the time to join us today. And to all of you that took the time to join us live. This webinar is being recorded and will be shared on the RDLA website. So if you have any friends that missed, feel free to send them the recording later. And we will see you guys either at Rare Disease Week or in March. Have a good day.